In Division I baseball, pitchers from warmer weather states are undergoing UCL reconstruction or Tommy John surgery at a significantly younger age than colder weather peers. Why? This isn't just about geography though, it's a developmental issue with long-term implications for how we train, monitor, and support our younger athletes. Today, we're going to look at what the research says and what we do about it here at VeloU. So a recent study published in the Orthopedic Journal of Sports Medicine examined 320 NCAA Division I pitchers who underwent Tommy John surgery between 2015 and 2022. When the researchers separated pitchers based on their college's climate, so whether it was warm versus cold, a clear trend emerged. Freshmen from warmer weather states were 1.94 times more likely to undergo a UCL surgery than their colder weather counterparts. Sophomores from warmer states were 2.04 times more likely. And then even by senior year, warmer weather athletes still had the highest rate of injury, 2.49 times higher than their colder weather seniors. And while the pitchers eventually accumulated the same injury totals, the warmer weather pitchers still consistently broke down earlier. Let's take a look at what might be causing this. Athletes in warmer weathers, right, in warmer climates, they typically have a greater access to year-round baseball. So what does that mean? That means more bullpens, more showcases, more competitive reps. And while that may seem like an advantage, it also introduces a significant risk. The issue isn't just workload, it's the timing of the workload. You see, at younger ages, the bones around the elbow haven't often fully ossified, meaning they haven't hardened yet, right? At the same time, the muscles responsible for stabilizing the elbow joint under high-speed movements are still, well, they're underdeveloped. When those support structures aren't ready, the elbow becomes increasingly more reliant on the UCL ligament to absorb most of the stress of the action, right? So over time, that unbalanced loading can lead to ligament failure or worse, bony ossifications, and especially when you introduce these high velocities at young ages. In other words, throwing hard before the body is basically physically ready to do so can really start to accelerate tissue breakdown. And the consequences, well, they're very evident in this data. These implications go well beyond the timing of surgery, right? Because you have multiple studies suggesting that the older an athlete is when they undergo UCL reconstruction, the better their recovery trajectory and their career outlook. So if warmer weather pitchers are sustaining injuries earlier, they may be facing a steeper uphill battle in terms of long-term performance and durability, even if they do return to play. This makes sense. The trend, more than a regional observation, it's a developmental warning. It's a challenge to how we think about early specialization and continuous exposure in youth baseball. So let's unpack that a little bit. Let's understand that, is it really that they're getting the surgery earlier and that's what's causing sort of the downfall of their return? I don't think so. I think it's that the athlete has to develop this certain level of confidence. And when you think about when an athlete generates most of their confidence in relation to a sport, it's typically going to occur at the younger stages when they're first uncovering how good are they in comparison to their peers. So when you rob them of 12 to 18 to 24 months of that time where they can generate that sort of confidence level, you now have an athlete that is very unprepared to compete at higher levels like college or even professionals because they don't have this intrinsic sort of I believe in myself mentality. So at VeloU, we don't just assess what an athlete is doing right now, we evaluate their entire throwing history. Two pitchers might move similarly and lift similarly, produce the same output, but if one has accumulated hundreds of more innings since middle school, well, that athlete needs a vastly different approach. This is also why we try to avoid rushing young throwers, especially those from warmer weather states that might have more exposure, into high effort, high output work right away. Instead, we focus on progressive overloading, building strength and capacity, and carefully sequencing all of this with the intensity. And it's why we use a device called the ArmCare device with all of our athletes. This device gives us an objective data point on how well an athlete is prepared for the demands of training and how we're likely to respond over time to the training. Rather than just relying on external metrics like velocity or pitch counts or even just RPE from the athlete, we allow this data to tell us how should we train, how should the athlete be responding, and then ultimately, what is reality telling us. If this earlier injury can be linked to some worse outcomes, then our job is to extend sort of the developmental window before breakdowns occur. This is not really about limiting the opportunities for warmer weather athletes. It's about managing the exposures, I guess, a little more intelligently, right? And a little more data-driven. By understanding when injuries are most likely to occur and why, we can take actionable steps to potentially reduce the risk of injury there and keep pitchers healthier longer. This is a great example of the work and effort and energy that goes into building all of the programs and working with the athletes at VeloU every day. This, ladies and gentlemen, is applied baseball science.